In the quiet corridors of power where centuries of tradition meet the cold edge of modern reality, something extraordinary has just taken place. A single document, a formal seal, a decision that has sent shockwaves through the highest levels of the British monarchy. Prince William, the Prince of Wales, the man destined to wear the crown, has moved with a precision and finality that few saw coming. And at the center of it all sits Queen Camilla's carefully built network of influence, a web of patronages, positions, and quiet power that has now been systematically dismantled by order of the Privy Council. This is not rumor. This is not palace gossip whispered over tea. This is a formal machinery of the state, the ancient instrument known as a Privy Order, brought to bear on one of the most sensitive questions facing the House of Windsor. Who will truly hold the keys to the monarchy's soft power? And for how long? 4 years. Camilla's rise has been steady, deliberate, and remarkably effective. From the early days as Duchess of Cornwall to her elevation as Queen Consort and then simply Queen, she cultivated a portfolio of charitable roles, honorary positions, and institutional relationships that gave her a quiet but significant footprint across British public life. Military affiliations, cultural organizations, welfare charities, regional associations, a network that, to her supporters, represented hard work and genuine commitment. To her critics, it looked like something else entirely, a parallel court, carefully constructed, that risked lasting beyond the reign of the king she married. William has never been one for public confrontation. His style has always been measured, strategic, long game. Yet those closest to the situation describe a growing conviction inside the Wales household that the monarchy of the future could not afford layers of influence that sat outside the direct line of succession and outside clear accountability. The patronage system, once a soft instrument of royal favor, had become, in their view, a potential liability. And so the work began, quiet, methodical, and ultimately decisive. Sources familiar with the sequence of events describe a series of private conversations that intensified over recent months. Meetings at Kensington Palace, discussions with trusted advisors, careful examination of the constitutional tools available. The Privy Council, that ancient body of advisors to the sovereign, provided the formal path. An order in council does not require parliamentary debate. It does not invite public consultation. It simply records the will of the crown acting on advice, and it carries the force of law within the royal household and the institutions that answer to it. The document itself, according to those who have seen its effects, was concise. It did 3 things with clinical clarity. First, it revoked the official standing of certain patronage arrangements linked to Camilla's network. Second, it closed residual access routes, invitations, administrative privileges, informal channels of influence that had grown up around those roles. Third, it redirected the associated responsibilities and symbolic weight back into the core of the working royal family, principally under the authority of the Prince of Wales and, by extension, the King. The moment the order was sealed and entered into the record, the machinery began to move. Organizations that had long listed Camilla in their materials quietly updated their records. Engagement calendars were adjusted. Correspondence that once flowed through certain private offices found new destinations. The change was not announced with fanfare. There was no press conference. No official statement from Buckingham Palace or Clarence House seeking to explain or soften the blow. The silence itself became part of the story, a deliberate choice that only amplified the impact. Inside the wider royal circle, the reaction was immediate and sharply divided. Some saw it as long overdue housekeeping, a necessary clarification of roles as the monarchy prepares for the next generation. Others viewed it as a profound personal slight, a public unraveling of the careful equilibrium that King Charles had worked to maintain. Camilla's own response, according to those near her, was one of controlled fury mixed with stunned disbelief. The network she had spent years building, the relationships, the quiet authority, the sense of permanence, had been cut at the root by a single formal act. William's calculation appears to have been both institutional and personal. Institutionally, the argument runs that a slimmed-down, focused monarchy cannot carry the weight of extensive secondary patronage structures without diluting its impact and inviting questions about accountability. Personally, the history between William and the Parker Bowles circle has never been simple. Old wounds, carefully managed in public, have never fully healed. The decision to act through the Privy Council rather than through informal family discussions sent a clear signal. This was no longer a private matter of family dynamics. It had become a question of the crown's long-term integrity. The timing is also significant. With King Charles continuing to manage the dual demands of duty and health, and with the Prince and Princess of Wales already shaping a distinct public identity focused on fewer causes pursued with greater intensity, the moment felt ripe for clarification. Patronages that once seemed like harmless traditional roles were suddenly reframed as structural questions. Who speaks for the monarchy? Whose name carries institutional weight? And who decides when that weight must be reassigned? As the order took effect, the practical consequences began to surface. Certain long-standing honorary positions quietly lapsed. Administrative support that had been extended to elements of Camilla's wider circle was withdrawn. Access to specific royal resources and platforms was recalibrated. The message was unmistakable. The future of royal patronage would be tighter, more centralized, and more firmly aligned with a direct line of succession. Critics of the move have already begun to frame it as an act of cold ambition, a prince consolidating power while his father still reigns. Supporters counter that it is the opposite, a responsible stewarding of the institution, protecting it from the accumulation of soft influence that history has shown can become problematic. Both interpretations contain elements of truth. What cannot be disputed is the scale of the shift. A network that once appeared settled and secure has been dismantled through the formal instruments of the state. The ripple effects are still unfolding. Organizations that value the association are adjusting. Courtiers are recalibrating their maps of influence. And within the family itself, the balance of relationships has been permanently altered. Princess and reported earlier tensions with certain decisions surrounding Camilla's circle have taken on new context. The king, placed in the difficult position of signing or assenting to an order that diminishes his wife's institutional footprint, faces a quiet strain that only those inside the institution fully understand. Yet William has shown no sign of hesitation. Those who know his method describe a man who studies a problem until the solution becomes inevitable, then executes without drama. The Privy Order is the purest expression of that style, formal, irreversible, and shielded from the usual palace soft soap. Once sealed, it does not invite negotiation. It simply is. What remains now is the aftermath. Camilla's public duties continue, of course. The Queen still appears at engagements, still supports the King, still occupies the constitutional role she was given. But the quieter architecture of influence that once surrounded her, the web of patronage that gave her a lasting institutional presence beyond the life of the current reign, has been stripped away. In its place stands a clearer, leaner structure oriented toward the next generation. This is a shock that has landed inside the monarchy and is only beginning to register outside it. A prince who has spent years preparing for the crown has used one of its oldest tools to reshape the landscape he will inherit. And in doing so, he has redrawn the boundaries of power around the woman who became queen by marriage. The document is signed. The order is in force. The network is gone. What happens next will define not only the remaining years of King Charles's reign, but the character of the monarchy that follows. The consequences are already beginning to surface in ways both subtle and unmistakable. Organizations that once proudly displayed the Queen's name among their patrons have begun the quiet process of revision. Websites are updated overnight. Annual reports are rewritten. Invitations that used to arrive as a matter of course now find different destinations. The soft architecture of influence that Camilla spent years constructing has been dismantled with the same formal precision that built it. Inside the royal household, the atmosphere has shifted. Courtiers who once navigated carefully between Clarence House and Kensington Palace now find the map redrawn. Access that was once informal and personal has become institutional and tightly controlled. The message is clear. Patronage is no longer a personal gift that travels with the individual. It is an instrument of the crown, and the crown's future direction is being set by the man who will one day wear it. Those close to Camilla describe a period of private reckoning. The shock was not merely the loss of individual roles. It was a sudden recognition that the network she believed to become permanent could be removed by a single order. For a woman who had weathered public hostility, media storms, and the long road to acceptance, this was a different kind of defeat. One delivered not by outsiders, but by the machinery of the institution she had joined. The fury, according to those who have spoken with her, is real. So is the sense of betrayal. Yet the public face remains composed. Appearances continue. Duties are fulfilled. The dignity of the role is preserved even as its supporting structure is taken away. King Charles finds himself in the most delicate position of all. The order required his assent. The Privy Council acts in the name of the sovereign. To refuse would have been to override his heir on a matter of long-term institutional design. To consent was to diminish the standing of the woman who has stood beside him for decades. Those who know the king say the decision weighed heavily. He has always sought balance between tradition and reform, between personal loyalty and the demands of the crown. In this instance, the scales tipped toward the future. The signature was given. The cost, both personal and political, remains private. William's circle frames the move differently. They speak of necessity rather than ambition. A monarchy that spreads its symbolic capital too thinly risks becoming decorative rather than effective. Patronages that once served as gentle ties between the palace and the country had, in some cases, become channels of influence that sat outside clear lines of accountability. By re-centralizing them, the argument runs, the institution is strengthened. The focus can return to a smaller number of causes pursued with greater intensity, the model already visible in the work of the Prince and Princess of Wales. Fewer names on letterheads, more measurable impact. A leaner, more modern crown. Critics reject that framing outright. They see a calculated consolidation of power, executed while the king still reigns and while Camilla's position remains constitutionally secure but practically constrained. They point to the history of tension between William and the Parker Bowles family, the earlier decisions around the Duchy of Cornwall, the quiet removal of certain informal roles. The Privy Order, in this reading, is simply the most formal expression of a longer campaign. The language of institutional reform becomes a polite covering for a personal settling of accounts. Both interpretations will continue to circulate. What cannot be disputed is a practical result. The patronage network that once radiated outward from Camilla has been stripped of its official standing. The residual privileges that accompanied it have been closed. The symbolic capital has been redirected. In the language of the court, the matter is settled. In the language of human relationships, the wound is open. The wider implications reach beyond the immediate family. Other members of the royal household are watching closely. The lesson is unmistakable. Influence that is not rooted in the direct line of succession can be revoked. Roles that appear permanent can be reassigned. The tools of the state, the order in council, the privy seal, the formal record, remain available and effective. For a monarchy that has spent years managing the fallout of scandal, departure, and public skepticism, the reassertion of central control carries both risk and reassurance. Outside the palace walls, the story is only beginning to take shape. The absence of an official announcement has allowed speculation to flourish. Some see a quiet revolution in the way the crown manages its soft power. Others detect the opening move in a longer realignment that will become fully visible only when William becomes king. The truth, as usual, sits somewhere in the contested middle, a combination of principle, personality, timing, and institutional self-preservation. What is certain is that the landscape has changed. Camilla remains queen. She continues to support the king. She still appears at state occasions and carries out public duties. But the quieter network that once amplified her presence, the web of patronages, the informal channels, the sense of an enduring parallel structure has been formally dismantled. The Privy Order has done its work. In the days and weeks ahead, the full consequences will reveal themselves. Organizations will adjust. Courtiers will recalibrate. The public will form its own judgments. Inside the family, the relationships will continue under a new set of realities. And at the center of it all stands Prince William, the man who chose a formal path rather than the private conversation, the institutional instrument rather than the family discussion. He has shocked the system. He has redrawn the boundaries. He has used one of the oldest tools of the monarchy to shape the monarchy that will one day be his. The order is sealed. The network is gone. The future has already begun to arrive.